The bright screens in the Lunar Observatory control room cast a blue glow on Dr. Alan Pierce's tired face. He had been staring at the unusual data patterns for 3 days now. Something was moving near Jupiter's orbit. Something that didn't match any known asteroid patterns or space debris. Alan rubbed his eyes and looked again. "Mary, can you run the thermal analysis one more time?" Mary Rodriguez nodded and tapped at her keyboard. The large center screen refreshed with new data. "Same results, Alan. These objects are generating heat, and they're moving in formation." The room fell silent. 6 of Earth's top astronomers had gathered at the Lunar Observatory after Alan's initial discovery, but none wanted to be the first to say what they were all thinking. "They're ships," Alan finally said. "We're looking at spacecraft of unknown origin." Mary's hand trembled slightly as she zoomed in on the digital representation. "Should we contact Earth?" Alan nodded slowly. "Get me a direct line to General Williams. This can't wait." Within hours, the world's major powers had been secretly informed. Emergency meetings were called. Military alerts were quietly raised to their highest levels. Yet the public remained completely unaware that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. At the Pentagon in Washington, Lieutenant Kate Morris sat straight-backed in an uncomfortable chair. As a specialist in both linguistics and military strategy, she had been pulled from her regular duties without explanation. Now she sat facing 3 stern generals and a room full of high-ranking officials. "Lieutenant Morris," General Williams began, "what I'm about to share is classified at the highest level." He nodded to an aide who dimmed the lights. A projection appeared showing the same data Alan Pierce had discovered. 72 hours ago, our Lunar Observatory detected these objects. We believe they are non-terrestrial vessels. Kate felt her heart rate quicken but maintained her composed expression. This was what humanity had both hoped for and feared since they first looked to the stars. "We need a first contact team," Williams continued. "People who can think on their feet if these visitors aren't friendly. Your name came highly recommended." Kate nodded. "I'm honored, sir. When do we begin?" "Now," General Williams replied. "We have 3 months at their current speed. Before they reach Earth orbit, far across the solar system, aboard the massive Vexari flagship Dominion, Fleet Commander Zarek studied the holographic display of the blue planet. His scaled skin reflected the light as he circled the projection. "Such abundant water," he remarked to his officers. "And the mineral scans are promising." Science Officer Terlan adjusted his viewing lens. Unlike the other officers with their battle-scarred frames and aggressive postures, Terlan was smaller, his movements more precise. "Commander, I've completed my analysis of their communication signals. They call their world Earth. Their technological development is unusual." Zarek barely glanced at the science officer. "Unusual how?" "They've progressed from primitive flight to rudimentary space travel in less than a century. Most species take 3 times as long. Their adaptive rate is remarkable." War Officer Krell snorted dismissively. "Yet they haven't even unified their planet. Our scans show multiple power centers and divided military forces. They'll fall quickly, like all the others." Zarek nodded. The Vexari Empire had conquered 17 star systems over the past 1,000 years. Each new species had fallen into the same pattern. Initial resistance followed by quick surrender once they understood the impossible odds they faced. This would be no different. "Prepare the standard first contact package," Zarek ordered. "Military, display over their major population centers," followed by the surrender terms. Terlan shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, perhaps we should consider a different approach. These readings suggest—" "The approach that has worked for 1,000 years will work again," Zarek interrupted. "The High Council expects this system to be secured efficiently. Do your scans suggest they have any technology that could threaten our ships?" "No, Commander," Terlan admitted. "Then the discussion is over. We will proceed as planned." Back on Earth, Kate Morris had spent weeks helping create first contact protocols. She worked with a team of 50 specialists from different fields, all preparing for possible scenarios. Their underground facility in Colorado buzzed with activity around the clock. If they can travel between stars, their technology must be centuries beyond ours, said Ben Wilson, the team's chief engineer. Kate studied the wall of screens showing the approaching ships. Technology isn't everything. History is full of technologically superior forces being surprised by primitive opponents. That's not very reassuring, Ben replied with a weak smile. It wasn't meant to be, Kate said. It was meant to be realistic. If they're hostile, we need to be ready to fight in ways they won't expect. Dr. Alan Pierce joined them, carrying fresh data printouts. Their deceleration has begun. They'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours. The 3 months of preparation had passed too quickly. World governments had quietly positioned their military forces while creating cover stories to explain the unusual movements. Civilian defense shelters had been readied under the guise of structural maintenance. The world's best scientific minds had developed potential weapons based on theoretical weaknesses in advanced technology. Yet all of it felt woefully inadequate as they watched the massive alien ships approach. On the morning of June 17, 2087, humanity held its breath. The alien vessels had settled into Earth orbit overnight. They were enormous, the largest nearly 5 miles long according to radar estimates. Kate stood in the command center surrounded by military and government officials from around the world. No one spoke as they watched the monitors. Movement detected, announced a technician. Several smaller craft have separated from the main vessels. The room watched as dozens of smaller ships descended toward Earth, positioning themselves above major cities around the globe: New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo, and more. In New York, people stopped in the middle of the street, looking up at the sky. A massive shadow fell over Central Park as a ship nearly half a mile wide hovered silently above the city. Cell phones captured the moment when humanity finally knew for certain they were not alone in the universe. Then the sky changed. Every screen, billboard, phone, and computer around the world suddenly displayed the same image: a tall, reptilian figure in ornate armor standing before a red and gold banner. Fleet Commander Zarek spoke, his words automatically translated after weeks of the Vexari analyzing Earth broadcasts. People of Earth, I am Fleet Commander Zarek of the Vexari Empire. Your planet now falls under our protection and control. Your resources have been claimed for the greater glory of the Empire. Resistance will result in significant loss of life. Cooperation will be rewarded. Your leaders have 24 hours to surrender on behalf of your world. The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun. In the command center, Kate Morris looked at the shocked faces around her. So much for peaceful first contact, General, Williams said grimly. Kate stood straight, her jaw set firmly. No, this isn't first contact. This is just their first mistake. 3 months after the Vexari ultimatum, Earth was not the easy conquest the alien empire had expected. The initial attacks on military bases around the world had met with fierce resistance. Humans had quickly adapted to the aliens' tactics, using guerrilla warfare and constantly changing strategies that confused the methodical Vexari forces. Colonel Frank Martinez wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the holographic map of the Vexari forward base in the Mojave Desert. His small team of 12 Special Forces soldiers crouched around him in the pre-dawn darkness. They wore mismatched gear, a combination of standard military equipment and modified Vexari armor, taken from dead soldiers in previous battles. Remember, our priority is capturing their communications officer, Frank said quietly. Dr. Miller believes their translator technology will give us a huge advantage. Jack Powell, his second in command, checked his stolen Vexari energy weapon one last time. And if the officer doesn't cooperate, we bring them in anyway. We need a live one this time. The team moved silently across the desert floor. Months of fighting had taught them how to avoid the Vexari motion sensors. The alien base glowed with a faint blue light in the distance. 2 patrol ships circled overhead, their searchlights sweeping the perimeter. Wait for the gap, Frank whispered. The team watched as the patrol ships followed their programmed route. When the timing was right, Frank signaled and they sprinted forward, reaching the base of the facility wall just as the light swept past them. Lisa, "You're up," Frank said. Lisa Chen, the team's tech specialist, placed a small device against the wall. The stolen Vixari technology created a temporary hole in the energy barrier. One by one, the team slipped through. Inside the base, Frank led them through corridors they had memorized from previous reconnaissance. They encountered 2 Vixari guards and silently took them down with tranquilizer darts specifically designed to work on Vixari biology, another recent human innovation. They reached the communications center and took positions. Frank nodded, and they burst in with weapons raised. 3 Vixari officers looked up in shock. They weren't wearing battle armor like the soldiers, just the lightweight uniforms of technical staff. Frank identified the communications officer by the distinctive collar markings they had learned to recognize. "Don't move," Frank ordered in basic Vixari, another recent advantage gained from previous encounters. One officer reached for a weapon, and Jack immediately fired, stunning him. The other 2 raised their hands in the universal gesture of surrender. "This one," Frank pointed to the communications officer. Lisa quickly applied restraints while the team gathered what data storage devices they could find. The whole operation took less than 5 minutes. "Mission accomplished," Frank reported through his secure radio. Heading to extraction point with 1 high-value prisoner and data packets, the team made it out of the base before the alarm was raised. By the time the Vixari realized what had happened, the humans were gone, disappeared into the vast desert with their prize. Aboard the Vixari flagship Dominion, Fleet Commander Zarek slammed his fist on the table, cracking its surface. Around him, his senior officers stood in uncomfortable silence. Another raid? Another success for these primitives? Zarek's voice was dangerously quiet. "How is this possible? They have no space fleet. Their weapons are centuries behind ours, yet somehow they continue to defy us." War Officer Krell looked down at the floor. "They do not fight as expected, Commander. They avoid direct confrontation, they strike quickly and disappear. Traditional conquest protocols are proving ineffective." Science Officer Terlan stepped forward cautiously. "Commander, I've been studying their historical battle records. This species has a remarkable tendency to innovate when threatened. They're adapting to our technology at an unprecedented rate." "I don't need a science lesson, Terlan," Zarek snapped. "I need solutions. The High Council is demanding to know why a simple pacification operation is stretched into months with mounting casualties." "Perhaps we should consider a different approach," Terlan suggested. "One that double the troops at all forward bases," Zarek interrupted. "Increase orbital bombardment of their military installations. We will crush their resistance with overwhelming force as we have done 17 times before." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility carved into the rock itself, Dr. Susan Miller examined the captive Vixari communication officer. The alien sat in a specially designed containment area, watching her warily with large vertical pupil eyes. "I believe I've isolated how their universal translator functions," Susan explained to Kate Morris, now promoted to commander after successful leadership in several key battles. "It's not just a language processor. It actually reads and interprets brainwave patterns." Kate studied the alien with interest. "Can we duplicate it?" "Better," Susan smiled. "We can improve it. This explains how they learned our languages so quickly. But there's something else." She led Kate to a laboratory where teams of scientists worked on captured Vixari equipment. "While studying their communications, we discovered how their shield systems operate. Look at this." Susan pointed to a complex diagram on her screen. "Their shields emit energy on predictable frequency patterns. If we can generate exactly the right electromagnetic pulse sequence, we can create momentary gaps." "Enough to get weapons through?" Kate asked, excitement building in her voice. "Enough to disable their ships entirely, potentially." In another part of the facility, the Vixari officer they had come to call Victor was talking with a human linguist. Unlike most of his kind, this officer had grown curious about the species that had captured him. "Your people fight strangely," Victor said. "Vixari would never sacrifice large units to save small ones." The linguist nodded. "We value individual lives." "Inefficient," Victor replied. but his tone suggested uncertainty rather than conviction. Is it? Your empire has conquered many worlds. But how stable are those conquests? Do the subjected species truly serve you, or do they simply wait for an opportunity to rebel? Victor did not respond, but his posture showed he was troubled by the question. 2 weeks later, humanity launched its first coordinated global counterattack. Using Dr. Miller's shield disruption technology, fighters struck simultaneously at Vexari positions worldwide. For the first time, human weapons penetrated the previously impervious Vexari defenses. Commander Kate Morris stood in the command center, watching tactical displays as reports flooded in from around the world. Vexari cruisers were falling from the sky over Beijing, London, and Cairo. It's working, she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. General Williams nodded grimly. For now. But they'll adapt, just as we did. Then we'll need to stay one step ahead, Kate replied. Dr. Miller is already working on the next breakthrough, and our guest, Victor, has been surprisingly helpful. On the Dominion, Zarek received the reports of their first major defeat with cold fury. 7 cruisers lost, hundreds of Vexari dead, major bases overrun. How did they do this? He demanded. Terlan reviewed the data carefully. They found a way to disrupt our shield harmonics, a vulnerability we overlooked. Zarek stared out at the blue planet below. In all his years serving the Empire, he had never encountered a species like this one. The High Council would not be pleased. Send word to the Imperial fleet, he said finally. Request reinforcements, not a battle group, a war fleet. Commander? Krell questioned, surprised by the scale of the request. These humans have proven themselves worthy of our full attention, Zarek said. They wish to fight? Then we shall show them what it truly means to face the Vexari Empire. As night fell over the Rocky Mountain facility, Kate stood at a window, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, she knew the Vexari were planning their next move. But for the first time since the invasion began, she felt real hope. We're still here, she said softly, and we're just getting started. 1 year into the war with the Vexari Empire, Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Former enemy nations now fought side by side. Underground factories worked around the clock producing hybrid weapons that combined human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien technology. The entire planet had united with a single purpose: survival. Commander Kate Morris stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed orbital defense station. Through the reinforced glass, she could see Earth below and the distant dots of Vexari warships maintaining their blockade. The past 3 months had reached a stalemate. Humans couldn't push the Vexari out of the solar system, but the aliens couldn't break through Earth's new defensive measures either. That was about to change. Intelligence reports confirmed that massive Vexari reinforcements were on their way. Beautiful. Phew, said a calm voice behind her. Kate turned to see the Vexari defector they called Victor. After months in human custody, he had gradually shifted from reluctant captive to valuable ally. His knowledge of Imperial tactics and technology had saved countless lives. I never saw my homeworld from orbit, Victor continued, his translator, converting his natural clicks and hisses into smooth English. The Empire doesn't encourage reflection. Well, we're big believers in reflection, Kate replied. But right now we need action. The war fleet is coming, Victor. Your war fleet. The alien's scaled face showed what Kate had learned to recognize as concern. The Empress herself has taken interest in this conflict. She has sent War Master Drezkor. Should that name mean something to me? Victor's vertical pupils narrowed. He has overseen the extinction of 3 species that resisted the Empire. He does not believe in submission or surrender, only total victory. Kate's communicator beeped. Morris here. Commander, Dr. Pierce needs you in the Mars Command Center immediately, came the urgent voice of her aide. On my way, she replied. She gave Victor one last look. Is there anything else I should know about this War Master? Yes, Victor said quietly. He was my clutch brother. And if he discovers I have helped humans, he will ensure my death is very slow. On Mars, humanity had established its first off-world military base. Dr. Alan Pierce had spent months developing an early warning system using satellites positioned throughout the solar system. Kate found him surrounded by holographic displays, showing the outer reaches of Neptune's orbit. "You need to see this," Alan said without greeting. He gestured to a specific section of the display and magnified it. "These readings came in an hour ago." Kate studied the display. Dozens of large objects were entering the solar system, far more than they had anticipated. "How many ships?" she asked, her voice tight. "At least 50 major warships," Alan replied. "Plus support craft. This isn't just reinforcements, Kate. This is an extermination fleet." Kate absorbed this news grimly. "How long until they reach Earth?" 3 weeks at their current speed. But that's not all. Alan switched to another display. "They're deploying something at the edge of the system, some kind of large structure." The image showed a massive ring-shaped object being assembled by smaller Vexari craft. "Victor," Kate called to the Vexari who had followed her. "What is this, Victor?" Stepped forward, his posture changing as he viewed the display. "A jump gate. They're building a permanent portal to bring in even more ships without the delay of conventional travel." "Can we destroy it?" Alan asked. "Not easily," Victor replied. "But perhaps we can use it." Back on Earth, in the underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Susan Miller worked with an international team of scientists. The captured Vexari technology had accelerated human scientific progress by decades. Weapons that could penetrate Vexari shields were now standard issue for Earth's defenders. But their latest project was far more ambitious. "The principles are sound," Susan explained to General Williams and the Joint Military Command. "We've adapted their faster-than-light drive to work with our materials. The prototype is ready for testing." General Williams looked skeptical. "You're telling me we can build our own starship? Already?" "Not exactly," Susan clarified. "We've retrofitted 3 of our largest space vessels with the adapted drives. They won't match Vexari capabilities, but they'll get where we need them to go. 1 jump, maybe 2, before the drives burn out." "And where exactly do we need them to go?" asked General Williams. Susan pulled up a star map. "Here, the primary Vexari supply depot for this sector." Victor provided the coordinates. The room fell silent as they considered the implications. Until now, the war had been fought entirely within Earth's solar system. This would be the first human mission to another star. Aboard the Vexari Command, vessel newly arrived at the edge of the solar system, War Master Drezkor studied the tactical display of Earth's defenses. Unlike Fleet Commander Zarek with his quick temper, Drezkor was cold and methodical. His face bore ritual scars from dozens of successful campaigns. "Their defenses are more advanced than reported," he noted to his officers. "They've adapted our technology with surprising effectiveness." Science Officer Terlan, still serving under the now demoted Zarek, stepped forward cautiously. "As I attempted to warn the command staff from the beginning, War Master, these humans display unusual cognitive. Save your excuses, Science Officer," Drezkor cut him off. "I'm not interested in why previous leadership failed, only in how I will succeed." He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare the Moon Killer. We will demonstrate our resolve." The weapons officer complied immediately, programming the massive weapon mounted on the underside of the command ship. Originally designed to shatter small moons to access valuable minerals beneath their crusts, it had been repurposed for this campaign. "Target their lunar base," Drezkor ordered. "Maximum yield." On Earth, Kate Morris was in a planning session with military leaders when the emergency alert sounded. All eyes turned to the main display as sensors detected massive energy buildup in the Vexari fleet. "They're targeting the moon," Alan Pierce reported, his voice strained. "Energy readings suggest a Planet Killer class weapon." "Evacuation status of the lunar base?" Kate demanded. 40% complete. We need at least 2 more hours to get everyone out." Kate closed her eyes briefly. 3,000 personnel were stationed at the lunar base, a critical part of Earth's defense network. "Get as many out as you can, and prepare our response. The Vexari weapon fired. From Earth, it appeared as a bright flash of light, followed by a horrifying sight never before witnessed by human eyes. A large section of the moon's surface erupted outward, sending debris cascading into space. The lunar base, along with nearly 2,000 personnel, was gone in an instant. As humanity reeled from this devastating attack, Colonel Frank Martinez prepared for what might be a suicide mission. His team had been selected to infiltrate a Vexari battleship and plant a virus developed by Dr. Miller, a virus designed to spread throughout the enemy fleet and disrupt their systems. This isn't just about revenge, Frank told his team as they prepared to launch from the Mars base. This is about buying time for Dr. Miller's Starship project. If we succeed, we might just have a chance. The 12-person team boarded their specially modified craft, each carrying the alien-human hybrid weapons that had proven effective in previous engagements. Frank took one last look at the red Martian landscape through the hangar windows. "Let's make it count," he said quietly, as the hangar doors opened to the blackness of space. 2 years into the war with the Vexari Empire, Earth had been transformed. Cities once filled with skyscrapers now featured underground living spaces and defense systems. Children played in reinforced schoolrooms while learning both math and how to recognize alien ship types. The night sky, once peaceful, now regularly lit up with the flash of orbital battles. Commander Kate Morris, recently promoted to admiral, stood in the launch bay of the Mars facility. Before her was humanity's greatest achievement since the war began: 3 spacecraft modified with Vexari faster-than-light technology. These ships, named Defiance, Courage, and Hope, represented Earth's first real chance to take the fight beyond their solar system. "They're not pretty," said Dr. Susan Miller beside her, "but they'll get the job done." The ships were a strange hybrid of human and alien technology. Their hulls were originally designed for Earth's orbit, now reinforced, and modified with recovered Vexari materials. The FTL drives, adapted from captured enemy vessels, glowed with an eerie blue light. "How many jumps can they make?" Kate asked. 2, maybe 3 before the drives burn out, Susan replied. "The materials weren't designed to work together. We're pushing the limits of both technologies." Kate nodded. "It's enough. We only need to reach the supply depot and return." The mission was both desperate and daring. Colonel Frank Martinez's team had succeeded in planting Dr. Miller's virus in the Vexari battle network, temporarily disrupting their communications and defenses. The virus wouldn't last long before the Vexari isolated and destroyed it, but it created a window of opportunity. In that window, the 3 human ships would attempt the first interstellar mission in human history, a raid on a key Vexari supply depot several light-years from Earth. "Admiral," a young officer approached with a tablet. "Final crew assignments for your approval." Kate reviewed the list. 80 volunteers would man the 3 vessels, all knowing the mission's dangers. Victor, their Vexari ally, would join the Defiance as navigator. Kate had assigned herself as mission commander despite objections from Earth's leadership. "Someone has to make decisions if we're cut off from Earth," she had argued, "and I know more about Vexari tactics than anyone except Victor." Now, as launch approached, Kate addressed the gathered crews. 2 years ago, the Vexari thought they'd found an easy conquest. They expected us to surrender within days. Instead, we fought them to a standstill. She looked at the determined faces around her. "But a standstill isn't enough. This mission will prove humans can't just defend. We can strike back. The intelligence and materials we bring back could turn the tide of this war." The crews boarded their vessels. Final checks were completed. One by one, the ships lifted off from Mars, heading toward the outer edge of the solar system where they could safely engage their experimental FTL drives without damaging nearby planets. On the command bridge of the Defiance, Kate took her position, in the captain's chair. Victor stood at the navigation console, his scaled fingers dancing over the modified controls. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her communications officer. Kate took a deep breath. "Send the signal. Engage FTL on." "My mark, 3, 2, 1, mark." The stars outside stretched into lines of light as the 3 ships vanished from the solar system. Meanwhile, in Earth orbit, War Master Drezkor was growing frustrated. The human virus had been purged from most of his ships, but not before causing significant damage to several key vessels. More irritating was the continued failure to locate his traitorous clutch brother, now confirmed to be helping the humans. How much longer until the jump gate is operational? He demanded of his engineering officer. 3 more days, War Master. The disruption set us back, but work continues. Drezkor growled softly. The jump gate would allow rapid reinforcement from the heart of the Empire. With it, he could bring in enough forces to overwhelm even the surprisingly effective human defenses. And the planet killer? Recharging, War Master. It will be ready to fire in approximately 7 days. Drezkor stared at the view screen showing the blue-green planet below. His orders from Empress Zelana had been clear. End this embarrassing conflict by any means necessary. If the humans would not surrender, they would be eliminated entirely. Prepare a ground assault on their Rocky Mountain facility, he ordered. Intelligence suggests their primary research center is located there. I want it destroyed before the planet killer is ready. On Earth, Dr. Alan Pierce worked frantically to complete the planetary shield grid. Based on adapted Vexari technology, the grid would theoretically protect the planet from the enemy's most devastating weapons, if he could finish it in time. Power coupling stable, reported one of his assistants. Grid Sector 7 is online. Alan nodded tiredly. He hadn't slept more than a few hours at a time for weeks. That makes 18 sectors operational, 6 to go. A warning alarm sounded. Alan rushed to the main display. Vexari dropships entering atmosphere, they're heading straight for us. The facility shook as the first enemy weapon struck the mountain above them. Security teams rushed to defensive positions while scientists hurried to back up critical research data. Alan activated the emergency communication system. This is Dr. Pierce. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately to secondary locations. Security teams to positions. We cannot let them reach the main laboratory. Across the vastness of space, the 3 human ships emerged from FTL travel near their target. The Vexari supply depot orbited a small red dwarf star, a massive space station surrounded by transport vessels, and a light defensive screen. No heavy warships detected, reported the Defiance's sensor officer. Exactly as Victor predicted. Kate studied the tactical display. They're not expecting an attack this far from the front. Good. Launch Phase 1. From all 3 ships, specially designed drones shot forward, broadcasting captured Vexari identification codes. The depot's automated defenses registered them as friendly and allowed them to approach. Defense systems compromised, announced the weapons officer as the drones uploaded a version of Dr. Miller's virus. We have a window of approximately 12 minutes. All ships begin approach, Kate ordered. Courage Team, secure those transport vessels. Hope Team, download their navigation data. Defiance Team, with me to the central hub. The 3 Earth vessels docked with the massive station. Armed boarding teams in hybrid armor rushed in, meeting minimal resistance from the confused Vexari personnel who had never faced an attack so deep in Imperial territory. Kate led her team through the corridors of the central hub, following Victor's directions to the main control room. They encountered a group of Vexari officers who raised their weapons, but Kate's team fired first with their shield-penetrating weapons. The aliens fell before they could sound an alarm. In the control center, Victor quickly accessed the station's systems. Downloading strategic data now, he reported, including fleet movements, supply lines, and... He paused, his alien features showing surprise. This is unexpected. Reports of rebellion in 2 recently conquered systems. It seems news of Earth's resistance has spread. Kate felt a surge of hope. Copy everything, and set the reactor to overload after we leave. The mission progressed smoothly until a warning came from the Hope. Admiral, we've got incoming. Vexari patrol cruiser just dropped out of FTL. Time to extraction? Kate demanded. 5 minutes, minimum to secure all targeted materials and return to ships. The patrol cruiser would reach them in 3. Courage, deploy our surprise, Kate ordered. The 2nd Earth vessel released a modified satellite that began broadcasting a powerful signal, a signal that matched the frequency of Vexari shield systems perfectly. As the patrol cruiser approached, its shield suddenly fluctuated and failed. "Fire," Kate commanded. All three Earth ships fired their adapted weapons simultaneously. The Vexari cruiser, caught completely by surprise with its shields down, erupted in a series of explosions. "All teams, complete extraction and return to ships immediately," Kate ordered. "We're leaving with what we have." 90 minutes later, the three Earth vessels, loaded with captured Vexari ships' technology and critical intelligence data, engaged their FTL drives and vanished, leaving behind a supply depot in chaos and a reactor counting down to destruction. As the stars stretched before them on their return journey, Kate allowed herself a small smile. For the first time, humans had taken the fight to the enemy's territory, and won. 3 years after the Vexari Empire first appeared in Earth's skies, the war had spread across dozens of star systems. What began as a simple conquest had become an existential crisis for the 1,000-year-old empire. Humanity had not merely survived. They had taken the fight to the stars and inspired something the Vexari had never encountered before: a galactic resistance. Admiral Kate Morris stood on the bridge of the Liberty, Earth's first fully designed starship. Unlike the early hybrid vessels, this ship had been built from the ground up with the knowledge gained from 3 years of adapting Vexari technology. Its sleek hull gleamed in the light of an unfamiliar sun, as a fleet of 20 similar vessels moved into formation around it. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her communications officer. Kate nodded, her eyes on the tactical display showing their target, a Vexari prison world where captives from a dozen conquered species were held. "Begin the operation. Remember, our priority is freeing the prisoners without civilian casualties." The Liberation Fleet moved forward, engaging their shield disruptors against the orbital defenses. In the 3 years since the war began, Dr. Susan Miller and her team had refined their understanding of Vexari technology to the point where human weapons could now reliably penetrate enemy defenses. On the prison planet below, alarm sirens wailed as the Vexari guards spotted the approaching human fleet. Unlike the early days of the war, the name human now struck fear into Vexari troops. Stories had spread of their adaptability, their unpredictable tactics, and their strange concept of alliance rather than conquest. "This is Admiral Morris of the Earth Alliance," Kate's message broadcast to the planet's surface. "We are not here to destroy. We offer freedom to all prisoners and safe passage to any guard who surrenders. You have 30 minutes to decide." Across the galaxy, Empress Zilana herself had taken personal command of the Imperial forces. The assassination of War Master Drezkor by resistance fighters from the Nelvari species, one of the Empire's supposedly pacified worlds, had forced her to the front lines. She had never expected to find herself in such a position. The Vexari Empire had expanded unchallenged for 1,000 years, methodically absorbing one star system after another into its domain. Now, aboard her personal flagship, the Empress reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. 7 major star systems had openly rebelled in the past month alone. The carefully constructed Imperial order was crumbling. "Your Majesty," her chief advisor approached cautiously, "we've received word that the humans have launched another liberation operation. The Caribbean prison world." Ceylana's scaled fingers tightened on the armrest of her throne. "How many ships?" "At least 20. And reports suggest they're not just human vessels. They appear to have allied with the Nelvari and Zereth rebels." This was the humans' most dangerous innovation, the concept of alliance between species. In all its history, the Empire had treated conquered peoples as subjects, not partners. The humans, however, offered equality and mutual defense to any who would stand with them. "We cannot win a war on multiple fronts," Zilana finally admitted. "Prepare my personal shuttle. I will speak with these humans myself." Back on Earth, Dr. Alan Pierce and Victor worked side by side in what had once been the underground research facility and now served as Earth's interstellar communication hub. The revolutionary technology they had developed allowed instant coordination across vast distances, giving the Resistance a critical advantage over Imperial forces. Another transmission from the Tellarite system, Victor reported. His appearance had changed over the years. He now wore modified human clothing and carried himself with a straight-backed posture, unlike the typical Vexari crouch. They've driven out the Imperial garrison. That makes 12 systems fully liberated. Alan nodded tiredly. Like many who had been fighting since the beginning, he showed the strain of years of war. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, a certain weariness in his movements. But there was pride there too. Have them establish contact with Admiral Morris's fleet. She'll want to coordinate the next phase. The door to the communication center slid open, and Dr. Susan Miller entered. Though she too showed signs of the long struggle, her eyes were bright with excitement. It worked, she announced. The new drive system passed all tests. We can now travel twice as far as Vexari ships in a single jump. For the first time in weeks, Alan smiled. That changes everything. If we can outpace them. We don't just outpace them, Susan interrupted. We can block their retreat. Cut off their supply lines completely. Victor looked up from his console. My people have never faced such a situation. The Empire has always been able to bring overwhelming force to any rebellion. If that advantage is gone. 2 days later, aboard a neutral station positioned between fleets, Admiral Kate Morris and representatives from 7 liberated worlds met with Empress Zelana and her advisors. The station's large conference room was divided, humans and their allies on one side, Vexari on the other. Kate studied the Empress with interest. In person, Zelana was taller than most Vexari, her scales shimmering with a golden hue that marked the Imperial bloodline. She carried herself with the confidence of one who had never known defeat. Until now. You have requested this meeting, Kate began. We are prepared to listen. Zelana's vertical pupils narrowed slightly. The Empire has existed for 1,000 years, human. We have brought order and stability to the galaxy. You've brought subjugation, countered the Nelvari representative, his feathered crest rising with emotion. You've stripped worlds of resources and crushed any who resisted. And yet, Zelana continued as if he hadn't spoken, we find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. Your species has demonstrated capabilities we did not anticipate. You mean we didn't surrender? Kate said simply. Yes. The Empress made a gesture that Victor had taught Kate was a sign of reluctant admission. And more concerning, you've spread this resistance to other worlds. The Empire now faces conflict on too many fronts. So you're here to negotiate, Kate concluded. I am here to end this conflict in a way that preserves the core of the Empire. Kate leaned forward. The Empire, as you've known it, is over, Your Majesty. We're not interested in conquest or revenge. What we want is independence, for Earth, and for any world that chooses to be free of Imperial control. The negotiations lasted 3 days. At times they nearly broke down completely. The concept of voluntary alliance between equals was so foreign to the Vexari mindset that Zelana struggled to comprehend it. Yet, faced with the alternative of continuing a war she could not win, the Empress gradually accepted the new reality. 1 month later, representatives from 27 worlds gathered on Earth to sign what became known as the Soul Accords. The document formally ended the Vexari-human war and established a new galactic council where all species would have equal representation. The Vexari Empire would retain control of its core worlds, but recognize the independence of all signatories. As alien delegations arrived for the historic occasion, Admiral Kate Morris stood with Victor on the steps of the newly rebuilt United Nations headquarters in New York. Did you ever imagine this outcome when your ships first appeared in our skies? She asked him. Victor made the Vexari gesture for amusement. Never. The Empire had conquered 17 star systems over 1,000 years without a single defeat. We thought Earth would be the 18th. That was the Empire's biggest mistake, Kate said quietly. Not just attacking us, but assuming we would be like all the others. You never understood that humans are at their best when things seem hopeless. Victor looked out at the gathered delegates. Scaled Vexari, feathered Nelvari, crystalline Xerath, and a dozen other species mingling with humans. Perhaps that was what the galaxy needed. Someone to show that resistance was possible, that freedom is worth fighting for. As the signing ceremony began, Kate reflected on the cost of the past 3 years, the millions of lives lost, the cities destroyed, the moon forever scarred. Yet from that devastation had emerged something unprecedented, a galaxy where different species could stand as equals, where cooperation might replace conquest. The Empire's first war with humans had indeed been their biggest mistake, and the galaxy would never be the same again.